widows, children, and orphans. Because of our focus, we join the world every year on the 23rd of June to celebrate widows worldwide. 23rd of June is a day set aside by the United Nations to celebrate widows and expose the challenges and unique experiences that widows go through globally. Now, in celebration of that International Widows Day, we are holding this LinkedIn Live session, as a pre-celebration of the June 23rd celebration of widows. It's also the 15th anniversary of the Rose of Sharon Foundation. So we're doing two celebrations together, and today we are looking at legal inclusion of widows in Nigeria. We know that widows go through a lot. The challenges are enormous. The experiences are mostly terrible ones. We all know that widows are subjected to practices that are harmful to their health and well-being. So today we're looking at how the law can be used fully to protect the social legal rights of widows in Nigeria. And with me to discuss this today are two seasoned speakers. I would like to introduce firstly, Mrs. Funmilola Odunlami. Ma, you are welcome to today's event. Please, Ma, I don't know if you have a word to say to attendees of this particular webinar session, Ma.
Good afternoon, Mrs. Bowie. Thank you very much for this honor and the privilege of inviting me to be part of your celebrations, and particularly for your 15th year and the International Widows Day. I hope that we're going to have an exciting time, and I welcome everybody to this platform. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ma, for that short word. Now, our second speaker is Mrs. Foluke Ademokun. Please, Ma, say a word to participants on this live session.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bowie, and thank you to the Rose of Sharon Foundation. Congratulations on your 15th year anniversary. I say thank you to participants that are joining us online. This is a work that one person cannot do. We are happy you are here, and hopefully we will all find a common solution to the issues that we face. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ademokun. Thank you so much. Now, to kickstart, like I said before, we all know that widows go through varied experiences, which are mostly not very good ones, especially in this part of the world, in Africa. We have some cultural and traditional practices that are harmful to widows. And we know that globally, different nations have done certain things legally to protect the rights of widows. We know that currently the issue of equality, inclusivity is on the hot burner. We've been looking for the past few years, looking at gender equality, because we know that women's rights are human rights. Widows are women. Therefore, widows' rights are human rights as well. So today we want to look at legal inclusivity. How can widows have strong legal backing? How can they be included strongly, on strong terms, with regards to the laws that we have in Nigeria? To the extent that practices that are harmful to the health and well-being of widows and their children can be reduced to the barest minimum, if not completely eradicated. I would like to begin by asking Mrs. Funmilola Odunlami, enlighten us briefly on what legal inclusion really means. Please, Ma.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Bowie. Legal inclusion is just to just put it in one word, and then I'll expatiate on it. Means that you are included by the right of law. You are including everybody in everything. They can participate and they have a sense of belonging. The law gives them that right. But to now expatiate on that, it means that everybody, man, woman, child, you have an environment which you can thrive. If it's employment, you are not discriminated against because of your sex. You're not discriminated against because of you can use your skills, your experiences are welcome. You are allowed to, like, fly, be yourself by law. Law allows you opportunities, you are included, so you're not discriminated against by the provisions of the law. So in short, I'll say that is what inclusion means. Legal inclusion by the law.
Thank you so much, Ma. So in addition to that, Ma, would you agree with me that legal inclusion is significant for women in any society?
It is very, very significant for women in every society because it strengthens the woman, it gives her confidence, it gives her wings to fly. She can do whatever she has. She has the right and the backing of the law to do whatever she wants to do. For instance, in places where women are not allowed to thrive, they don't have the backing. And at times, it's not really the backing of the law, it's the enforcement of it that makes it difficult. Like freedom for women to be educated now. A woman that is educated can fly. A woman that is educated will be able to know her rights when she's being cheated, help her children, help the economy because she'll be able to earn more than she's earning, help in cases of safety, health of the home, health of herself, and then be aware of what is going on around her. And then even the economy, help the GDP of the economy. Because at the end of the day, if a woman earns more, it affects the home, the economy, the home itself will thrive better. They'll live better than they're living. Things just will go better generally for the country, the home, the society, and the country when a woman is included by law. And then another thing is, if a woman is included, they know the policies that would benefit women. And so they will make sure that these policies are part of the policies of the government. And so maybe in short, and then issue of violence too will reduce because they'll know their rights. They'll know how to fight back. They'll know what to do. They'll know where to go. So this, in short, don't let me take too much of it. That's except
Thank you so much, Ma. Thank you so much, Ma. But I have another question as a follow-up to that. Considering the significance, the top significance of legal inclusion in every society, how critical and fundamental it is to sustainable development and to the well-being of women, children, the entire community. What are the laws in Nigeria that ensure legal inclusivity for women and widows?
For women,
what are there laws that women can rely upon as a framework for legal inclusivity?
Okay, as a framework, because interestingly, I would say all laws should generally apply to everybody. But having said that, there are some laws that maybe I would bring out that would act as a framework for women. And then the constitution of the country is the ground norm, is the basic framework for women. And then we have some provisions in that constitution. Like we have section 17 of the constitution. We have what we call the fundamental rights. And then before the fundamental rights, we have the basic rights. Fundamental objective, and then the fundamental rights. The fundamental objective, we have section 17 that allows the woman to integrate and not be discouraged. And then sections, because of our place, not discriminated against because of our place of origin or sex. So a woman can use that. And then also we have section 17, which deals with issue of health. Everybody has a right to health, education, and employment and all that. But unfortunately, those objectives under the fundamental objectives. They are justiciable, what the lawyers call justiciable. That means you can't go to court and enforce them. But the ones that can be enforced are the ones under Chapter 4 of the Constitution, under the fundamental human rights. For those ones, you have personal dignity. A woman is entitled to a personal dignity. A woman is entitled to, that is Section 34. A woman is entitled to personal liberty. A woman is freedom from discrimination, right to acquire properties. These are all under the Constitution, constitutional provisions, which a woman can fight for, go to court and enforce. Then apart from this, we have the one that is now all inclusive, well, more inclusive of women and women, specific to women, the one that we are talking about, the VAP law, Violence Against Persons Provision Act 2015, which has brought in a lot of laws discriminating against women, but it focuses more on the sexual violence. But there is a section for the widows also. So but it's basically a law for women, I would say. And then we also have the Marriage Act, which allows a woman who marries under the act to be entitled to property of her deceased husband, to inherit the property of her deceased husband. So then we also have the Criminal Code, which also, Criminal Act, which also gives room for trial under ordeals, prohibits trial under ordeals. That is, if a woman is going through any method of primitive method of determining her guilt by all these traditional practices, trying to make sure that she's guilty of an offense she's not guilty of, that is trial by ordeal. Yeah. So the Constitution of the Criminal Code also provides for that. And then we have all these international laws. African Charter on Human People's Rights, African Charter on Rights of Welfare of the Child, Protocol of AU Solemn Declaration on Gender Equality, Universal Declaration on Human Rights, and then the king of them all, or I said the queen, since we are women, the queen of them all, Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, which is all encompassing. Nigeria has ratified all this, most of all these laws, but the problem is that they have not been domesticated. So if they have not been domesticated, because the Section 12 of the Constitution requires that such legislation must be specifically domesticated. So if they are not domesticated, that means automatically they cannot be enforced. So that's the problem with that. So those are the laws that I'll say that women can use as framework for legal inclusion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dulami. I will come to you, Mrs. Foluke Ademokun. Mr. Dulami has done so well in initiating all the laws that women can rely upon as a legal framework for inclusion in this country. And when I say women, I also mean widows as well, because widows are women. All right. Now, looking at what she has said, we have the Nigerian Constitution, Section 42, that talks about the rights of women and widows inclusive. We have the Act of 2015. We have the Marriage Act that talks about a woman having the right to continue with the husband's property. Then we have the Criminal Act also. Then we have the international laws as mentioned, chief of them all being CEDAW, all right? But when you look at all this, you will agree with me that women in Nigeria, widows in Nigeria, do not have at least 10% of this legal backing in all the experiences and challenges that they go through. Today in Nigeria, when a widow loses her husband, a lot of practices, a lot of rights are performed on her that are harmful to her health, well-being, and development as a woman. From your experience in working with widows, what do you think is really a problem? What are the challenges? What are the things that are working against women in terms of access to these laws? Are they cultural? Are they societal? Are they traditional? What are these factors that hinder legal inclusion in Nigeria for widows, considering the laws that are available to them?
Yeah, thank you so much, for the question. I will say it's a mixture of different issues, and some of them you have itemized. Yes, you asked the question about the legal governance, the structure, and our legal, friend, if I'm permitted to describe her as such, highlighted, all those formal legal instruments, but even within the formal legal instruments, talking about the constitution, talking about the VAP law, and talking about even some states also have, like Enugu state specifically has, a law, on dealing with the issues of widows. I think Enugu state should be the only state that has that. But we should also remember that side by side with these laws are the traditional, practices, the customary laws. And I'm glad that when she was talking, she also informed us that for women who are married, under the Marriage Act, they have opportunity to benefit from the provisions of the Act. But for a woman who, for instance, married under customary laws, they do not have such privileges. And from court judgments that have judged on the matters relating to inheritance, widows, and their children, you'll see that sometimes judges use their discretion, because judges are also human beings. They live within our societies to make judgment. We have landmark judgments from the East. I think the lawyer will be in a good position to cite the cases. But I could remember Justice Toby, who said that some of the practices that we carried out, they are repugnant to natural justice. But then they run away, even though they draw inferences from the Constitution, they run away from directly citing the provision of constitutions in their judgment. So our cultural practices are issues that that contend, our customary laws, our cultural traditional practices contend with legal provision, and we must recognize that. And I also want to say here that on the side of society, sometimes we take women as one homogeneous group, and that is part of the problem that we are having. That once a law is focusing on maybe gender inequality, we tend to think that that law will work for all, just like the VAP law. Even though we had mention of widows, but it didn't go in depth, into all of the areas. When we talk about CEDAW, CEDAW talks about all forms of discrimination, all forms of discrimination. So that's one thing we look at the VAP. Does the VAP cover all forms of discrimination against widows? Those are, yes, it talks about different, acts of violence against different sets of people, but focusing on widows, themselves, it's something that, we need to look at. So in terms of society, I brought that in to say that society itself, in our response to the matters of widows, we have our fault. Because we tend to treat all women as if they are the same group. The women group is heterogeneous. It is not homogeneous. The moment we begin to recognize that widows groups, the women group are heterogeneous, then we begin to look at policies, look at laws that attend to different issues, different priority men. So you may have the laws. That's one thing in terms of custom, in terms of tradition, in terms of society. Then the other thing is, if you take a group analysis, and it's important that when we respond to issues that attend to women, we do gender analysis. And when we do gender analysis is not just about men and women. Even within women, there are different groups. That's why you have cross-cutting, matters, that you look at. That how does this issue affect a woman in terms of class, in terms of ethnicity, in terms of education. We have done a vulnerability studies, and we found that the lesser educated a widow is, the more she's tend, to be poor. If a widow that is unemployed, if a woman is unemployed and she becomes widowed, the support that she will need will be higher than one who went to school, a woman who is highly educated, a woman who, has a good job, who is gainfully employed, a woman who has very good network. And sometimes even ethnicity, the ethnicity of a woman, as at the time she was widowed, could also affect, the way, she suffers, that she's deprived within a society. So a whole lot of things. It's not just enough for us to say that, oh, we have laws that deal with widows. Even though the laws we have now, they are not sufficient, but let's just assume that, yes, we have laws that are sufficient. But do you look at the intricacies, the individual characteristics, of every group? Maybe you're a woman. What makes you to be the potential for you for getting less, than other people within that society? And it was good that we started this by talking about legal inclusion. And when you talk about legal inclusion, you are looking at, a right-based approach, to resolving, our societal issues. It means, do you accept first that as a woman or as a widow, she has a right? If you have accepted that she has a right, what are the structures that you have put in place, maybe as a people, as a community, as a government, to ensure you enhance, those rights, for her? So those are the things. It's not just enough to say, okay, we have the laws, but what are the structures? How robust is the framework that we have in place? How easy for a woman who is widowed to have access to justice, for instance? I've been working on widows issues for some, and I know that access to justice is something that is very, very difficult. Even in this state that I'm speaking from, I would not want to mention a particular state, where I'm speaking from. When you say you have the Office of Public Defender, it is assumed that widows who are poor will have access to free legal services. But that is what is on paper. That is not what happens. If you get there, they do not have lawyers to take care of the women. And sometimes for years, you are fighting, for a case, and the case, because of lack of legal, support, and yes, these are the issues that you face in terms of having access to legal services for widows.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Ademokun. You talked about how legal inclusion can help women's education and also help women to get out of poverty. So I would like to ask, will you agree with me that legal inclusion has great influence on financial independence and economic power for widows?
Yes, of course. Because some of the cases that most of the cases that have gone to court is because of assets. It's because the women, maybe after the husband passed, they couldn't have access to the assets that the men left. And without access to productive assets, there's no way you could live your full potential. It will be difficult. It will be difficult for anyone, male or female, to live their full potential without assets, without access to productive assets. And resources are very, very important when you talk about justice. So they are all intertwined. Why would I go to say I'm seeking justice? Because I've been robbed of resources. I've been robbed. There's something that I've been robbed of. That is very, very cogent, very, very important to my survival, to my moving forward. And that's why I'm seek justice, to have a redress. Those matters. So I think, like you said, if we can solve if we can solve this problem to access to justice for widows, most of the problems will be have solved.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ademoko. God bless you for all that. Mrs. Odulami, I'm coming back to you. You mentioned the VAP Act, which is a very significant legislation where widows are concerned in Nigeria. Because you mentioned all the laws you mentioned initially, we can see that the VAP Act is just the only one that has a specific section that is devoted to promoting the rights of widows in terms of providing protection against practices that are harmful to the development and the well-being of widows. So I would like to ask Madam, looking at the VAP Act, we know it's a national legislation, all right? And any state that needs to access the VAP Act needs to domesticate it as a state law. That's the process, all right? Now, what do you say is the impact of that on states? I know some states have done that already, but some haven't. What do you think is the influence of that for states who have and for those who haven't? I mean, what do you think is the impact of that on widows' rights in terms of having full access to legal protection?
Thank you very much. I had to go and check how many states have actually domesticated it. And surprisingly, I found that on the NACTIV website that it's 35 states with the FCT. It's only Kano states that have not domesticated it. Though different states have them in different forms, maybe not necessarily the way the act is. But if a state does not have a law that protects the widows, then let's just say that the widows cannot find justice. There is no inclusion for them. If the law does not make provision for practices that affect widows, then there's no way. If it's not an offense, then it can't be a right for me, if that makes sense. It's only if it's an offense, then that way I can claim my rights under the offense, and I can say I've been aggrieved. Somebody has abused my rights. But if I don't have that right initially, from the onset, then I can't even go anywhere to claim that right. So for states that have domesticated it, that means the widows, depending on the extent to which they've been domesticated, that's another thing. Because various states have various stages of domestication. It's not as if it's been taken, so they have various. So it depends on how, to the extent of which each state have domesticated it. Then to whatever extent the state has domesticated it, then the widow there would have a right to seek redress against any act, any harmful act, because the VAP Act it prohibits an act by a person against who subjects the widow to harmful practices. So if the law in that state provides for that, then the widow can go to court. Harmful practices is under VAP, so that way states are domesticated that way, because harmful practices, section 46 of VAPP Act defines harmful practices, traditional practices, to mean all traditional behavior, attitudes, practices which negatively affect the fundamental rights of women, girls, any person, and includes harmful widow practices, denial of inheritance or succession. So it's not just the harmful practices. Issue of succession is also part of it. And then it goes on to female genital mutilation, circumcision, forced marriage, forced isolation for family and friends. But the one which concerns us really here is harmful practices against widows, and then the succession bit. So some states have the ones like, some states have them separate, some states have them together. Some states have one or the other. So depending on what the states have, that will be the extent to which the widow can fight for her rights.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bilami. I have another question for you based on what you just talked about now. Now, you mentioned that there are different stages of domestication. Now, if you go to NAPTIV site, NAPTIV is the government agency that has the responsibility of implementing the VAP Act. Okay, so when you go to their site, you can find information about the VAP Act and states that have domesticated. Last time I checked, there were just about 25 states. All right, now you said this morning that already have 85 with the FCT. You know, that's amazing. But that is not also amazing for me when you look at the practice on ground. You know, now if we have 35 states that have domesticated this law, which is the only law in Nigeria that has a tiny section devoted to widows, And we still have cultural practices, as I speak currently, that are harmful, that are still ongoing in diverse communities in Nigeria, that are still harmful to the well-being and development of widows. Would you say that this is a problem of the different bottlenecks in the stages of domestication in these states? That's one. Or would you say it's a problem of lack of awareness and information about that individuals are not coming up, or widows are not coming up to use this law the way they should? Or what do you think is the legal challenges, you know, when you want to marry that with the number of states that have domesticated the VAT, which is, as I said earlier, is the only law in Nigeria currently that has a segment devoted to the protection of the rights of widows. What do you
things work? To ensure that just laws in books. So the states too need to at least make sure that these laws are available in other languages to enable the women be aware, at least be able to read, those who can read in their language, be able to read. And then apart from that, for the women too, intimidation, even when they know, there's intimidation by the family members, by the community. If you go, you see what will happen to you. If you go, you see there's the fear that if I go, and then there are times when some even go, then they are ostracized by the society. So the woman is living in fear. And then it's interesting that even some women believe that it's something they should go through. And I find that ridiculous, because they believe that if they don't do it, maybe their husband won't sleep in peace, or their husband won't rest well, because they've been brainwashed. That's the word culturally, that these are things they need to do. That if you don't do it, and then they're blackmailed, they'll take their children away, they'll blackmail them. So they're living in fear. So for me, and then poverty, like Mrs. Ademoku said too, because even if they want to fight, where's the money? And most of these people in the cities is getting a bit better, not where it should be, but most of these people are in the villages. Are they even aware? Do they even know what's happening? Do they even know what's going on? Who is telling them? So there's so many things that are creating these issues, that women from the state level, from the women's side too, that they're not accessing the laws, and then the laws are not effective.
Thank you so much, ma. Mrs. Ademoku.
I'm sorry. Also, yes, the enforcement, like I said.
Yes, ma'am.
The police, do we have enough people to enforce? Because they just think, there is robbery here. Do we really have the capacity to now go after somebody who is intimidating a woman or telling her to drink something? So all those things like I said, infrastructure capacity,
Yeah.
training.
Yeah.
They're not well trained also. So there's so many
Thank you
issues.
so much, man. Thank you so much. Mr. Ademokun, Mr. Sodulami has mentioned a lot of things that are actually limitations to widows accessing the laws to protect themselves. The last thing she mentioned was poverty, lack of education, fear, intimidation, lack of manpower, and things like that. But we know that as advocates of the rights of women and the rights of widows, that we are a voice for those who are voiceless. All right. So I would like to ask you, Ma, how do you think we can create more awareness, provide information for our widows to help them, to help the public, general public, get to know about this law? You know, how do we create awareness about it? What do we do?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. I've been waiting for that question to come, and I'm happy it came. Yeah, because the 17th goal of SDG talked about partnership for development. In Nigeria, we are used to wanting to be the one and only, and it does not work globally. That's why we are not even getting global support. We should be able to work together. And the first step to the question, the first step of answer to the question you asked is what we are doing now. Yeah. Rose of Sharon Foundation, you know, asking persons from maybe other private concern or like me from Ajoka Ishata Flappy Foundation. You know. Imagine what you have been doing all by yourself, Rose of Sharon. Yeah. What you have been doing, I read so much about the work you do. If in doing that, you connect with maybe Ajoka Ishata Flappy Foundation, and we are together to address the issues, you know, of widows. Aside from providing information to widows themselves, because I don't want to discountenance what you have said in terms of access to information. I worked on the domestic and sexual, at the time was involved in that, the response team in Lagos State. And at the first instance, when that law, you know, was, you know, established in Lagos State, it was discovered that it wasn't, you know, meeting the needs that they thought it was going to meet. Why? Because women were not taking advantage of the law. And we found out that women were not taking advantage because they didn't have information. They didn't know it existed. And that's the same thing that's happening. So if we are together, you know, to say, okay, we are going to address this through advocacy, even through having a database for widows in Nigeria, you will not believe what we'll be able to solve. Because there are widows, you know, who come to you, Rose of Sharon Foundation, to seek support, you know, and they're moving from foundation to foundation. Imagine if we work together as a network, as a coalition, and we have a database, we have all of the information. When somebody comes to you and you are checking, oh, you have been to Ajoka Ishanta Flappy Foundation, then we'll be able to educate them. Because from the studies that I've done, I see that we have younger widows now than we used to have because of COVID, because of insurgency. Younger women, young as 20 years, 22-year-olds, they have been widowed. So the strategy that we used those days to take care of widows, just providing humanitarian services, that strategy will not work for a woman of reproductive age. So one of the things we need to do is what we are doing now, to get together, to form a formidable team, address the issues of widows, to be a voice, you know, for them, to speak, you know, at, you know, where it matters. Because whether you like it or not, they also need legislative intervention. I'm grateful that Apostle Alakija, you know, she's known in and out of Nigeria doing this. That same, you know, access that she has, we can use that to sit with the National Assembly, you know, as people who take care of widows, as people who are familiar with the priorities, the needs of widows, as organizations who have access, direct access to widows themselves, we can bring them along and look at the VAP law, or even not the VAP law, look at best practices across the world and say, look, the National Assembly, is it the committee in charge of women affairs or whatever committee that we need to, you know, address, even on humanitarian affairs, because government is spending so much, they have people on the social register. Did we bother to find out how many widows are on Nigeria's social register? Because if you are talking about social protection, the first category of persons who need social protection anywhere in the world should be widows. So that's one thing that we need to do together. And thankfully, this is the first step in the right direction. And I'm hoping that this will not just be like a talk in a conference, that will have action, items that we are going to, activate even after this. Then we've talked so much about the formal laws. We've talked so much about reform. But how can we transform our social norms? It's very, very important. The transformation of our social norms. Because no matter what the laws, the formal legal environment says, please do not forget that these formal laws are contending with the customary laws. There's a contention. So how do we transform the minds of people through advocacy, the minds of gatekeepers, traditional rulers? Can we? I know if we pull all of our resources together, even at the highest point of the hierarchy of traditional space, there is access to that. How can we get moving at that level? And we have talked so much also about capacity building. Capacity building for persons who deal with widows. We should also remember that we need to focus, we need to engage government to focus on widows' issues as widows, not as women. Because when you bring it under that broad term of women, you tend to lose the little details. And if you want to promote inclusion, there must be a government body that we target directly those who are excluded. Why domestic and sexual violence is getting a very high rate of attention in Lagos State, for instance, because there's a team that was created for it. There's staffing dedicated to it. There's funding dedicated to the issue of violence, domestic violence. Is it possible that as organizations working together, that we now say, okay, let's work on this. Let's see how we can get federal, state, local, or whatever government focus directly on the issues of widows. Is it something that is doable? How can we work together to get UN women to say, let's create a framework that focuses, let's engage government to create an institution. Even if it's under the Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, I hope they will still have the ministry. Although when they had it, I've always said it didn't in any way, my own constituents did not in any way, get benefit the advantage that they should, But if we are sitting down together, we are brainstorming, we'll find a way to articulate ourselves and say, look, it's better when you do this thing as a group, not as an individual, because then people will listen, with the mass, population. Imagine maybe you work with, let's say you work with 1,000 widows, and I work with 500 widows. Imagine 1,500 widows with the backing of Rose of Sharon Foundation, and all of us just say, okay, let's have a meeting with the Speaker of the National Assembly, or let's have a meeting with the chair of the committee, on this. So this, I think, yes, we are going to be complementing the government efforts, but we are also going to be aggressive about it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. That was wonderful. Mr. Dulami, would you say that the VAP Act has really made any impact so far in the lives of widows in Nigeria? Do you have any success stories of, assuming you have, is there any that you want to mention, success stories in the utilization of the VAP Act in terms of protecting the rights of widows, ma'am?
Unfortunately, I don't have, because of this meeting, I actually went to their website to try to see what they have on widows. And I think more of what they have is on sexual offenses. On sexual offenses, they have, since inception, they've done 1,372 cases, which have been reported. 258 convictions, 66 still in court, 200 and 300 investigation, 93, and all that. But unfortunately, I didn't see a single one. And it's only from there that I can bring up my statistics. So that was why I decided to go into that detail. So that it's not as if I'm just talking off heart. I actually did my investigation to go and find out what, and all I saw were these on sexual offenders.
Okay.
Battery, rape, infliction of physical injury, all that. But not, I didn't see anything on violence.
Yes. Thank you,
Having said that, maybe because it's so restrictive, because it's just for FCT. The law is just for FCT Abuja. So maybe that also, because like I said, most of these people that are affected are in the villages. We have some in the cities, but so that could also be part of it. And then, like Mr. Ademokun said, now people are more aware of issue of sexual violence cases. So they, before, if I dare to say, because I was part of Lagos State, that Lagos State was one of the states that actually brought this to the fore.
Absolutely.
Before Lagos State did this, it was taboo. But now everybody's speaking out. So maybe, like Mr. Ademokun said, if we have more education, more advocacy, people are maybe, and then more funding for that. If I may say again, Lagos State government has, although that's not the question you asked me, but it just occurred to me now. There's the Administrator General and Public Trustees Office, which caters for widows. It's been there for years. It's also a problem of maybe people are not that aware, but people still go there. So on what you asked me, that is what I found.
Okay, thank you.
I didn't find.
All right, thank you so much, Ma. I was just going to quickly ask a follow-up question to your response. We all know that looking at the VAP Act, a large percentage of the act is focused on curbing violence against women in our society in Nigeria. And just one segment, Section 15, is the only segment in the VAP Act devoted to protecting widows' rights in terms of curbing practices that are harmful to the welfare and the development and the lives of widows. Now, would you say that the VAP Act has a comprehensive protection coverage for widows? If you don't think it has, what do you think can be done?
Okay, I'll answer that in two prongs. Just like there are laws that are not specific to widows, but widows can use. So I don't want us to just say it's only Section 15. Under the VAP Act, there are some other sections also that widows can use, though it doesn't specifically mention widows.
Correct.
Yes, because I looked at Section 10. It says it's deprived, anybody who deprives another of his or her liberty, except by court order, commits offense. So when a widow is forced to stay in the house, because I have an example of that, until her husband is buried, she's not allowed to go anywhere. So that one could be used. So that is that. Then also Section 13 provides an offense for somebody who forcefully isolates another person, which they normally do when a widow. So a widow could use that. And then Section 14 provides for person who causes emotional, verbal, and psychological abuse, which is what they do to widows. So for me, those are sections. It's just because 15 specifically mentions widows. So I don't want us to now say all the, and then Section 18 also for somebody who intimidates another person, and then Section 20 for Firearms Act. So there are other sections that widows can use. And then to answer your question, I looked at what are the issues of widows? What are really the issues of widows? So for us to know, so if what are the issues of widows, so that we can now see if they have been captured or not. And I noticed that issues of widows are intimidation, segmentation, harmful practices, lack of access to property, to the property of the deceased, not allowing them to inherit from. And if we look at this law, it might not be specific to it, but it captures intimidation, it captures discrimination, it captures harmful practices, it captures denial of inheritance or success. Because my first thought was, no, it's not. But on the second thought, it captures more than, the only thing we can say is not specific to widows, but once it's there, the widow can use it.
Are you saying for you?
Can
I'm coming to you. I have a question for you based on what she's saying. Ma, are you saying categorically that for you, you think that law has a comprehensive protection coverage for widows?
No. I'm not saying it has comprehension. I'm saying comprehensive. Yeah. I'm saying it has more than
just one section.
Because yes, more than one section. But there are other things that a widow goes through, like stigmatization. They stigmatize widows. This doesn't deal with it. A widow is also demeaned. This doesn't deal with it. So that's why I said, what does a widow is maltreated? So there are some specific areas that we need the law to focus on, that the law has not focused on.
Thank you so much.
But I don't want us to just like look at it and say, no, it doesn't deal with widows. Right. But there are still other areas that widows or areas of that widows suffer. Okay. That we need to emphasize in this act.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Now, Mrs. Adimoko, based on what Mrs. Odulami has explained, she talked about different segments of the Act that, from her explanations, widows can leverage on. But in my mind, I'm thinking, is there a structure, a process structure? For instance, a widow says, I've been intimidated, I've been harassed. What is the process structure in that law on how is a widow in a village, for instance, and what's the structure of the process the widow can on her own take to get justice? That's one. Then would you agree, Mr. Adimokun, that I want your take on the VAP Act? That's my second question now. It's 2 in 1. What's your take on the VAP Act? Do you think that the VAP Act needs extensive amendments? And do you think what we need is an amendment or a specific law focused on widows in Nigeria, considering the uniqueness of the experiences of widows in this country? So there are 2 questions or 3 in 1, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you so much. I would want to say that there is a need for the review of the VAP law. And I think there was an attempt during the 9th Assembly, I suppose, to have to do a revamp, which did not succeed because I think it's common knowledge that there are provisions within the VAP law that needed to be expanded to take care of the issues of widows specifically. So your second question, I don't think there's any harm in having additional laws, even though the VAP law has been domesticated across. There's no harm with that. Because for me, the issues with widows, you asked a question about law and economic power linkages, which is very, very fundamental. And this is something that we need to. When people face backlash, when widows face backlash or retaliation because they have reported a case, they withdraw because there's no provision, there's no structure in place to protect them. In some other economies, even though you are not a widow and you have experienced trauma, there is a center to manage trauma for you. There's a structure, there's something in place for you to get people who will counsel you, even who will direct you, who will share with you the processes. We do not have that in place. And I think it's high time as a nation you begin to consider having a structure that will help people go through process, knowing, as you have said, that maybe 70% of women who will be affected by these problems, they are uneducated. They do not live in the city. They live in rural areas. Their access to services will be very, very difficult. So I agree with you. And one thing that I also would want to mention, because when we look at the issue of widows, we just think in terms of okay, maybe harmful practices. Economic deprivation for them is a huge, it's a huge problem. And if you do an analysis of the cases that you got, I think you have quite a significant number that fall within that spectrum of economic deprivation. So we need to look at it. I'm concerned. I'm sorry if I'm taking this out of context, because we are talking about legal inclusion. I also think our tax laws do not accommodate, tax policies and laws do not accommodate the peculiarities of widows. They do not. A woman without a husband, what is their basic need? What do widows? Oh, they want to be able to send their children to school. And I don't think there's any harm in trying to send your children to school. But when you do not have the money, you go looking for people who can help you to do it. They want to be able to take their children to the hospital to have good, they can't do that. Some of them really want to work. But in this case, that ASU will be on strike for how long? You don't get that out of the university until you are 28, 29. Then the employer is saying that you must be 27 by the time you apply to this. So there are so many irregularities that we need a law that will help us to correct and to have a framework, a structure in place to help people go through the processes, smoothly. These are lacking. So we need to look back to your question. We need to look at the VAP law again to make sure that it's comprehensive enough, at least to cater for those things within the confines of the VAP law. And I do not see any problem having a dedicated law, a dedicated structure beyond laws, because laws are open to interpretation. And that's why I beg Mrs. Odulami, Barrister Odulami, please just pardon me. When you have all these general laws that are open to interpretation, I have some concerns with that. And I think the problem we are having with our VAP law stems even from SDG. If you look at sustainable development, I don't know what the issues with widows are, that even the international community, apart from CEDAW, they are not paying attention. Look at target 3 of the SDG, 5.3, talking about harmful practices. When we are going to give an example, they talk about child marriage, talk about FGM. Where is the widows? Where is the widows issue?
I not mentioned. Yeah, thank you.
SDG not particular about that.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Demoko, but I'm not allowing you to rest. I have something to ask you again. Mr. Odulami mentioned, did she call it an agency or a committee or a desk dedicated to widows issues in Lagos State, and that it has been there for a long time. All right. So from that premise, I want to ask a question. I know that a lot of states have domesticated the VAP Act into a law. But what Lagos State still has currently is the Domestic Violence Law of 2007. From my own understanding and knowledge, I don't think Lagos State has domesticated the VAP Act. Now, do you think the reason why Lagos State has, I'm bringing Lagos State in because we currently have over 1,000 widows that are benefiting from our programs and our services, and a chunk of that number are domiciled within Lagos State. All right, so this is very it's of great concern to me and my foundation. So I would like to ask, do you think that this desk or this agency Mr. Odulami mentioned probably be the reason why Lagos State hasn't thought it right or thought it needful to domesticate VAP Act into a law in Lagos State alongside domestic violence law? Because the domestic violence law is doing a lot in terms of curbing violence against women in Lagos State. And like Mr. Odulami said, Lagos State was at the forefront in bringing these issues of violence against women to the forefront in Nigeria. And many states have copied Lagos State. And that's kudos to the state. And that's why Lagos State is known as the state of excellence. But I'm wondering, coming from the background of someone who is working with widows, the state is not domesticating the VAP into law. Do you think it's because of the structure they already have on ground? One, and do you think it is still necessary for Lagos State to look into that?
Well, to your first question, I would say no. That is because they have an existing structure. Because I've been working on widows matters. I've been raising with the Ministry of Men Affairs and Poverty Alleviation for some time now. I didn't get to hear about this desk or department, whatever they call it. You can only, they say you don't change the winning team. So you can only say, no, we're not going to look at something else when what you have on ground is working. And you can't say it is working unless the user tell you that, oh, what you have created is working. I'm a user. Yeah, and you're a user. I wouldn't know if your organization, is familiar, with this particular desk. The only time I got to know that there's another department that I could, engage with on Windows, but when we had the case, we need a legal, service, for somebody, and I was told that within the Ministry of Youth. So maybe Mrs. Odulano will tell us, what department that is. Because me, I see confusion.
Yes.
If it's under youth and the women affairs are different, I think there's confusion even within the state. So I'm saying no way. There's no way we can use that to deprive widows, of having an agency that will actually be wholesome in delivery, because there's no success to this one. So
okay, over to you, Ms. Odulano.
Okay. Yes. Actually, I used to work in Lagos State before I retired, and that was a department I worked in for 6 years, Administrator General and Public Trustee Office. It is an agency on its own. It's a creation of statutes, and it's there. The Administrator General has the right to look into administration of estates of deceased people, either under the law or either if it's not by law. Even some people make the Administrator General and Public Trustee their executor. In their wills, they make that office the executor. The office has been in existence by the time the state was created, 67. That's why I said maybe publicity. And people use it. Widows who, particularly for inheritance purpose. So maybe that is why for issues of domestic violence, for issue of violence, harmful practices, most times, okay, maybe I should backtrack a bit. The agency, Lagos State Agency of Lagos State Domestic and Sexual Violence Response Agency started as a team. In the team, you had Ministry of Justice, you had Education, Women Affairs, Youth and Sports, you had outsiders, you had the police, you had Mirabel Center. There were some NGOs, so many people before the agency was actually created as started. So either of these people, once it's an issue of violence, sexual violence, you can report to any of them and they'll take it up because it's a team and they work together. And that is how they work. So either of those ones will work. But the issue of the widow in particular, Administrator General and Public Trustee, so I don't know. So that is why maybe that is not. So if they have issues of widows, they might refer to that department, that office, because it's an office, it's not an agency, it's an office who will deal with it. And they even go to court on behalf of estates. They do so many things on behalf of estates.
Okay, so man, they do it for free? Is it pro bono?
It's free. It's free because it's part of government. It's an office in government, under the government. So as a lawyer, I worked in that department when I was in government, like I said. So you just go there. If you have a case, you write your petition, you go in, they call people for they call the parties together, try to mediate and see what can be done, and then move on from there. And at times, if they need to go to court, they go to court on behalf of those they need to go to court for. So it's there. And they even have a bigger office now because they've moved outside Secretariat. But I don't have their address now. Maybe by the next program, I'll give you more.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, ma'am. I'm glad that you're coming on the 23rd of June for our program. And so we'll speak more on this. A lot of widows who are listening now will also be at that program to listen to you. So that will be very good for Lagos State. Mrs. Ademokun, I'm coming back to you. Are you still there?
Yes,
yes. Okay, yes. So you will agree with me that we need to work hard in Lagos State to ensure that the VAP Act is domesticated in Lagos, in addition to the Office of the Administrator General and Public Trustee that Mrs. Odulami just mentioned, right?
On the
What did you say, ma'am?
I just have to administer maybe what is that investing and all that.
Yes. So I have a question for you. What are the reforms that you think we need to do? We have just 2 more questions to go. For you, Mr. Ademokun, what are the reforms that you recommend? I know you've mentioned a few of them. Are there more reforms that you would like to recommend? How do you think NGOs, the government, the public, the private sector, the communities can work together to ensure that widows are included in our legal framework in terms of protecting their rights in Nigeria?
Well, I think we agree that I would also in the administration of matters that pertain to women. I think we should work with government, see how the domestic and sexual violence project, because in the sector, the managed process.
Hello, Mr. Ademoko, are you still there? Hello, Mr. Ademoko, are you still there? Okay, Ms. Odulami, I have one more question for you before she comes back. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, she's back.
Okay, she's back. Yes, go on, ma'am. Yes, we can, yes.
For legal reforms, and we also think that the government engaged with NGOs should be modeled after the domestic and sexual violence team. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I think that there is need for a strong partnership. The success of the sexual team is based on active participation, active engagement, active collaboration between the Ministry of Women Affairs, the Ministry of Justice, and NGOs, non-governmental organizations that work in the space of gender-based violence. I think that's the most, because if there is an office, for instance, that has, since 1967, has been working on the administration of will, and they're not even known to, participants within the state. Then they need, more collaboration. So, such agency.
Okay, so I was going to ask you, Mr. Dulami,
Yes,
my last question for you coming from here. It's what role do you think the legal community can play to ensure legal inclusion for widows? What's your last word for decision and policymakers? It's a 2-in-1.
Okay. For everybody, for the legal committee, policymakers, okay. For everybody, advocacy, lawyers, pick up, let everybody know, let people know the laws, let all our people know that the laws are there. Then educate people. We should need to educate them. We need to educate our clients. We need to educate everybody that we come across. Let them know what laws will help them. And then free legal services, which I must say Lagos State is doing some of that. In Ministry of Justice, we have the Administrator General and Public Trustee's Office, like I said. We have the Office of the Public Defender. We have the Citizens Mediation Center where they can mediate. So free legal services, and then pro bono, go to court on behalf of widows. Let's have those pro bono services, which is free legal services, which will seek justice on their behalf, ensure that when they go, the laws are enforced. Because like I said, we have some of the laws, is the enforcement, application and enforcement. Let's make sure that as lawyers, we see to the logical end that, and then let's have, like Mrs. Ademoku said, yes, there's nothing wrong with the Administrator General and Public Trustees law being expanded. Let's promulgate for our law policies. Let's promulgate laws that would help these widows. We need to, the world has moved on from those days. But I know that the Administrator General and Public Trustees law is under review. And I think maybe it's at the House. So I know that is, but I don't know when that is going to pass. So that needs to be done. It needs to be passed quickly. Then publication of provisions of the Act in various languages. We need to help work, like Mr. Adeboku said, work with NGOs, work with the civil rights organizations, work, collaborate, which was what, like she said, made the DSVRT, Domestic and Sexual Violence Response Team. And that was why I said it was a team. That was why it worked, because it was a collaboration. So lawyers, we can't do it on our own. We need to work with other agencies. And then NBA needs to be at the forefront of this. Nigerian Bar Association needs to be at the forefront of this, leading this from the front and co-opting everybody that needs to be co-opted, making the necessary noise that needs to be made, lobbying the people that need to be lobbied, policymakers that need to be lobbied. They can do that. They have the power to lobby those that need to be lobbied. And then we have women organizations too, like FIDA, AULA, all those ones, NBA, Women's Forum. They all work behind the scenes. Then the streets, and because I'm on some of the platforms, anytime they have widow issues, because they're all women organizations, female organizations, they rise up to assist the widows. We should do more. We should let people know that these organizations are there to assist the widows. And then the judges, and they're from our end, should uphold the law. It should not be decided on technicality. It should look at the human angle of cases, and let's be based on those human angles, and let's be more helpful to the widows, I'll say, in determining the law. So I think that.
Thank you so much, Ma. Thank you so much. We're so grateful. We have about 3 questions, so 3 or 4 questions. So we'll just quickly go through it. I would also like to mention that Ms. Ademoku mentioned it slightly. There's a move to amend Section 15 of the VAP Act to increase the penalty and to expand the meaning of harmful practices. From what I know, it scaled the second reading at the House of Representatives last year, but since then we haven't heard anything about that move to amend Section 15. We can't wait to see that Section 15 passed into law and given the force of law, so that it can also be updated in the states that have domesticated it. Now, my question 1 says, my widowed mom is struggling with my cousin over the acres of family land which our father owned before he died. He is our father's elder brother. He refused to divide the farmland between my brothers and his sons when he was still alive. He outrightly told my mom that he won't do that until he is no more. It's been over 20 years since my father died, and over 5 years since my uncle died as well. And right now, my brothers have need for the land in the village, but my cousin has refused to share the land. Is there anything the law can help in this case? Mr. Odulami, I'd like you to help us, please, ma'am.
Yes, depending on the state.
Yes.
If it were Lagos State now, I would have just said, go to the office of the Administrator General and Public Trustee and tell them what your problem is. So it needs, that person needs to know what the law of that, and that was why we were talking about the VAP enforcement, the domestication. It depends on what the law of that state says. So does the law of the state, would it help in such a case? But it needs to find out. Maybe go to, like, okay, that's another thing. From what I read from VAP's website, they have offices, zonal offices that people can go to. So that person who is educated can go to VAP office and find out if it's something that VAP will do, or go to the Ministry of Justice of that state and find out what can be done. Because unfortunately, I don't know the states, or get a lawyer friend to advise, because that's, since I don't know the states, that's what, but that person, I'm sure by the time he or she goes around all these people, there'll be a solution.
Thank you so much, ma. Hello, Mr. Demoko, are you there?
Sorry, I thought my video.
Okay, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can hear.
Okay, ma. So somebody asked a question that the cousin, Mrs. Odulami, has answered, but do you have anything to add? Somebody asked a question that their father died, their uncle died, and the cousins refused to share the farmland.
Yes, what I want to say is that just like that Papa domesticated, depending on the state, not to say even the Southeast, if that is they have team, but they also want to pattern, responses to the so when I work also, I know they have a team that attends to such matters. So the person needs to go and find out if within the state they have a team maybe by the office of SD, working in conjunction with agents address
Okay, like Mr. Dulami said, you need to find out, whoever sent the question, you need to find out what the law, what the law in your state is, what is the operative law in terms of protection of the rights of widows. Has your state domesticated the VAP Act into a VAP law in your state? What are the processes? What's the structure? You can visit the Ministry of Justice. You can, but first of all, I think you need to visit the Ministry of Women Affairs in your state to find out, either the Ministry of Women Affairs or the Ministry of Justice, to find out, ask questions. There might be a table, there might be an office, just like you have in Lagos State, Mr. Dulami talked about. You talked about the Office of the Administrator General and Public Trustee. So you need to find out these things through these ministries in your state to know what to do. And I think this is for Luka Demoko was talking about moving to offices where widows can get help. For instance, maybe there's FIDA in your location, or there's an NGO in your location that you can talk to that can offer free services or pro bono legal services to help you in this case. So something certainly can be done through the law. Thank you. Second question says, how do we reconcile the rights of widows with cultures in northern Nigeria? Widows really have close to no rights around there. Mr. Dulami, can you help us,
ma'am? Because most of the laws there are based on their Islamic law. So it depends on whatever their law says. And that is, I cannot, how do I answer that without going against their culture? It's more than culture. It's a religious thing, it's a legal thing for them. So I don't know how to say go outside their legal, because if you put, it's just like somebody marrying under the customary law.
Yeah.
You put yourself under the customary law. If you married under the Marriage Act or in the court, or then that's another law operates. So as much as possible, maybe with education, people should start moving away from and trying to get married under laws that would protect them, because as it is, there's little or nothing if that is the way what the Sharia law says.
Okay, Sademoko, are you back?
Yes.
Okay, do you have anything to add to that question regarding women in northern Nigeria who face cultural restrictions, and they have close to no rights? Is there anything you want to add?
Well, I think like Tsunami said, that's the problem when you have different regimes, formally, informally, contending against one another. But what I think advice is sound when you're going to get married. You should know that if it's not on the Marriage Act, you may not protect.
Okay, Mr. Dulami, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
The third question is, please, ma'am, can we have your contacts? Do you permit them to have your contacts?
Within limits.
Somebody is asking, Can we have your contacts?
Yes, within limits, depending on, I don't know how you can do it, because these days, ordinarily I would have said yes. But
okay, so
I don't
what we
know.
need to do is to work with our IT team to find out who the person
Yes.
is. We can get the person's contact, and then I can talk to you later about that.
Yeah, yes, we can do that, but I just
Thank you,
wouldn't
ma'am.
want to have
Thank you,
prank
ma'am.
calls.
I
Thank you.
understand. Mrs. Ademoku, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, the third question is, can we have your phone number, ma'am? Are you open to that, or you want us to talk about that later?
Okay. Yes, my number.
Okay, we should post your number on the chat function.
Yes, it's okay.
All right, thank you. My first question is, which is probably the last, I think, is currently facing challenges with having access to our father's house. We don't have money, but we are surviving. What do you think we can do immediately where we are? Mr. Demoko, did you hear that?
Yeah, that how old is the person? Because that would determine, you know. I think what I will advise in this particular case, the person can get what the age of the person, you know, qualifications. Because if you don't have money, what you do have money in the job? Because I think it's necessary to employ is what is a problem now.
Okay, Mr. Dolami, our last question.
Yes,
Are you
please.
hearing me, ma'am?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. Yes.
It's difficult, but it can be done.